Welcome everybody, thanks for tuning in to our Enduro Bike Roundup. We have 8 bikes that we're going to be reviewing individually. We have the Fuji Auric LT, the Fezzari LaSalle Peak, the High Pivot Machine Norco Range. We've got a Canyon Torque 2.9, the Cannondale Jekyll, a Specialized Enduro, the Canfield Lithium, and an Orbea Rayon. So stay tuned, we're going to be reviewing each of these bikes and you won't want to miss out. Before we get into it, we would like to thank our sponsors for helping us make this shootout possible. Fox definitely took care of us with protection and making sure we looked good out on the trail. And Maxxis Tires helped us have a nice even platform and made sure the traction was there when we needed it, and all the bikes had a fair chance of performing equally out on the trail. So without further ado, let's get into the contestants. First, we're gonna start out with the Canfield Lithium. This is a bike that, without a doubt, surprised me the most.
Me too.
I've not ridden a Canfield for many years, and gosh, it was a real treat to ride. It had some unique characteristics, and overall though, very impressive bike in many aspects, not just the performance, but the weight, the price, a lot of really cool things about it. So Dario, why don't you just lead off with some of the key geo numbers that you liked, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think for me, the standout feature or like the standout feeling of the Canfield was like a pretty tight wheelbase, but a pretty upright ride feel. It's got a tall stack even amongst the other bikes, like 644, I think is the number on that. It also has the shortest wheelbase of all the bikes on test, partially because it has the steepest head angle, also due to some really short 430 mil chainstays. All that makes for a really nimble, super maneuverable feeling bike. You can really squiggle it through terrain.
Also has a pretty short reach.
It does, yeah,
comparatively.
Like 475, which is tied with shortest with a couple other bikes. The thing that stood out to me instantly though on the bike was just the way the rear suspension feels. It's super free moving throughout the stroke. Within the first couple hits, you notice just how quickly it's moving through that shock, but it doesn't feel like you're wallowing too much. It's just moving a lot. I kind of like the feeling, and I could see if you rode that bike a ton, you'd get used to it and start to really enjoy that I don't know, super plush feeling. I mean, to use the word, but yeah, it felt good. But it's not I wish that bike had more progression. I mentioned it in the long-term review of it, or in the longer video of it. It just felt like you couldn't pump for speed quite the same as some of the other bikes, but it also was super comfortable. So
yeah, Sean, what do you think about how it rode?
I mean, I really liked it. It was plenty playful for me, and I mean, that's what I was more focused on, was just jibbing around on the trail versus trying to nuke down as fast as I could. Granted, Last Chance is not the trail that you can nuke down very well.
Yeah.
But a lot of the just weird corner rock hits and doubles just is a lot of fun to ride.
Yeah, it's worth noting that it pedaled really well.
Surprisingly well. I mean, there was, like we were saying, a lot of surprising things. This bike in this spec currently retails for $6,099. With Olin stuff, I mean, that's pretty cool. It weighs 33.7 pounds,
yeah,
which there are some much more expensive, fully carbon fibered bikes that weigh the same. Yeah.
It's essentially the same weight as the Enduro.
Which is crazy to me, but it's cool. I'm a big fan of aluminum bikes. I like the way Alloy rides. The suspension is very active. You know, you used the word fluttery, I think, in the dedicated review, and that's a great word. That shock it just traces and hovers over the ground and a lot of the lava rock. The thing, I do agree. I think, volume reducers in the shock would definitely help with that progression. Since we've not ridden a lot of Olin stuff, we didn't have Olin's volume reducers readily available to do that, but the thing that, you're talking about the pumping aspect of kind of that suspension. One of the things I loved about pumping that bike and catching downside was that short rear end.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, like specifically on Last Chance, where you come out of that corner and there's that rock where the Norco hung up, and there's like, you get over to that backside. It's so easy to pick that bike up and push down with that short rear end and just accelerate off every little thing because it just gets over it so fast.
Yeah, that is the benefit of the short wheelbase, is you can kind of generate speed in all those like smaller pockets on trail.
Yeah.
And I also noticed, because I was riding a lot of the trails blind, this was a bike that made it really easy to enter a corner too late or kind of sloppy and thread into it nicely, where on some of the longer, like burlier bikes, you had to set up really wide to like hook into the corner nicely. So it feels like something you can kind of ride blind and like squiggle through the trail really well. As a result, you maybe exit the turn with a little less speed, but I think that only matters if you're racing. Like it feels really quick and fun. I like that sensation.
Okay. Sean, final closing thoughts on the Canfield.
I like it. Likes to party.
Okay.
I just like riding how, like playing with it.
Yeah, it's a fun bike.
It is.
All right, well, Canfield Lithium, very solid bike. It's high on my personal list. It's a sweet bike. It looks good.
If I was spending my own money on something, like it's definitely.
It'd be a very tempting bike.
It's also got a sick head badge.
It does, and a really cool color.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unique, right? You show up to the trail and there's not going to be 25 people riding that thing. Yeah. So, all right, let's move on to the Canyon Torque 2.9. As we mentioned in our kind of detailed individual review, which we did for each of these bikes before this episode, availability issues led us to getting an extra large, which is way bigger than we would have liked, but it was that or we didn't get one, and it was a really cool bike and we wanted to ride it, and we're stoked we did. So the 515 reach is way outside our normal riding zone, but the rest of the numbers are pretty on par. We've got a 643 stack, 63.5 head tube angle, 77.5 seat tube angle, 30 mil bottom bracket drop, and 440 stays. It's a 170 29er, and Sean, I'm gonna let you lead this one off.
Oh boy. So I mean, when we first got this bike, we took it out to Royal Flush in the snow.
Yeah, that's true. We've had this bike a while.
We have.
Yeah.
And that first ride, I was like, oh God, this is gonna be awful. Just so long, and that trail was just so slow. But then getting on a rockfall, chasing you down, oh man. Like I didn't care about the 515 reach. It felt comfortable and fast and just so much grip. And even for how long it is, it still handled a lot of those switchbacks pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean the downside, which we kind of talked about in the individual review, is that you called it the shopping cart feeling.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, on some tighter trails where like the turns kind of close out a little bit, you know, I would kind of feel like I'm here and I would slowly start coming off the back of the bike, and then I just felt very disconnected from the front end because that reach was so long that I was like, man, it's just too freaking long. But you know, I don't want to focus too much on the long reach because realistically I would just buy a large and it would be what I wanted. But moving into like suspension performance, climbing performance, you know, where'd the bike sit for you?
Climbs well. I mean, prior to this test, I spent a day pedaling the bike, and it pedals surprisingly well for being like a pretty, like parking lot wise, soft feeling 170 mil bike. I didn't touch the climb switch. It felt comfortable. Again, like because of the like super long reach, it's like a little less comfortable seated position wise, but just size down. Fine.
30 mil bottom bracket drop was a bit of an issue for,
I
like
low.
to climb tech stuff.
Yeah, and I found like the pedaling platform on the Canyon, so like the Rayon also has a 30 mil bottom bracket drop, or 35, and
30 I think.
Is it 30?
Orbea is 35. Yeah,
35.
It's adjustable, but depending
so like
on.
Orbea's got a lower BB, but a better pedaling platform, and so you hit pedal less on that than on the 30 mil drop on the Canyon. So it's not going to be your like tech climb god, but it's super comfortable. The steep seat tube angle is a great like body position. And what was nice is you turn around and go downhill and it's super soft feeling. It's a nice bike. Like over small chattery stuff, I really liked the way the suspension felt. One-off hits felt good. I think on the brakes, it starts to get a bit harsh.
Yeah.
But they bill it as like a free ride bike more than like an enduro race bike. So I feel like it's meant more for those like big jumps, like one hit kind of stuff, where maybe that suspension feel is a bit better. It's progressive enough that it can take like a pretty bad case or something and not like buck you.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
I think it's a very fast bike. It's pretty dang sporty. To me, I didn't feel that it was plush and soft, but I didn't feel that it was firm or harsh like the Orbea. Like it's kind of like that, you know, just like soft enough to take the hit off, but also very soft and supportive that doesn't like fatigue you. And it was, to me, a really cool feeling bike. You know, I definitely like early season riding at the end of last winter, middle of the season, I was riding that thing at Sandy, putting in some big miles. Like, it's a pretty fun and great all-around bike. It jumps really well. It's just under 35 pounds, and it retails for $43.99 right now.
Yeah, to me, like that.
The bang for the buck value on that bike is high.
I think it's my value take for like the lineup.
To be able to get on a $4,400 bike, and like keep up with, you know, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 bikes, like pretty dang close. Like, there's something to be said about that.
No doubt.
All right, so that is the Canyon Torque 2.9. We will move into our first of two high pivot bikes, the Cannondale Jekyll. This bike, as well, we've had for, we had one for a very long time early in the year and put a lot of time from a dissected to a long-term review. Got this one now for the this roundup. So it's a bike we know well. Dario, I know you put in probably the biggest single climb day on that thing, and high pivots are known for not being the best climbers. So let's get into your experience out on the trail.
I really liked that bike. I took it home with me for a couple days, rode some familiar trails, because I think coming into this test, knowing what we were gonna ride, it was the one I was most unsure of, and I was impressed. As you said, I did like a really long pedal day on it, kind of because I expected it to be a bit of a pig, and it wasn't. It is a little bit, let's say, like more energy requiring on the climbs, but not horribly. Like, I pedaled like 7K on it, and it was fine. Like, I didn't feel shelled at the end of the day. I was a little more tired than I normally would be doing like a loop that I do a lot, but it was fine. Pedals well, and the nice thing about it is like you keep that shock open, and like the positioning on the bike is great, and it absorbs like technical climbing really well. I thought it was like pretty killer on tech. Yeah, and then you point it downhill, and it's a really, really fast bike.
And I think the geometry probably helps be or make that bike pretty well rounded, right? It's size large. We had a 475 reach, 643 stack, 64 head angle, which is not steep or overly slack.
No.
77.5 seat tube angle, 30 mil bottom bracket drop, and 442 chain stays. So it's definitely like kind of right in that, I don't want to say safe middle zone, but it's like not extreme and it's not overly conservative.
It's the numbers you're seeing on a lot of enduro bikes now. I think like 64 head angle is more and more the one that a lot of bikes are ending up at. It's funny because we pushed like slacker than that for a while, and a lot of brands are going back to 64. It just seems like for maneuverability and like stability at speed and on steep stuff, it's a really good middle ground.
Sean, you got much to add on that one?
I think Dario covered a lot of it.
Yeah.
I mean, all I can really remember is riding it at Klein and being like, oh man, this thing's sick.
Yeah.
Like for a mid-high pivot after riding the range for so long, it just like rode so different, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, it's at home, like at speed, it enjoys, I think, big chunk. It also does pretty well on some of the smaller chop, but like you said, you do have to push a little bit more with the feet, and I think it does welcome and reward a little bit more intensive, like I guess like riding with a purpose, as opposed to just kind of like, I'm just going out for a cruise today.
Yeah. And I think spec kind of like speaks to that as well. Like it comes with the biggest rotors of anything on test.
Yep.
Like it's meant to be a bike ridden hard. It comes with like a 220 up front, 200 in the rear with already powerful brakes. And I feel like that spec choice speaks to the fact that it's like a bike for racing on hard terrain.
Yeah, the one spec thing that you didn't love was the WTB KOM trail wheels.
Yeah, I've ridden those rims on a lot of different wheel sets, and they're fine. Like they dent easily, but you can always pull the dent, and they do air up even when they're pretty beat. It's funny, the hubs, like it's so rare that I ever remark about that, but like I found that like on sections of trail where you suddenly wanted to like pedal out of a corner, they have such low engagement that you'd like go half a crank before you hit a pawl sometimes, and if you were racing, like that could be an issue. That being said, a pretty minor gripe.
Yeah.
Overall, I thought the build spec on that bike was quite good.
Yeah, at right, currently 6150.
Yep.
You're getting a 35.5 pound, very capable high pivot 4-bar, mid high pivot 4-bar, which
Yeah, I think it's pretty turnkey if you were like buying a bike to race.
That gets you in the door for
Yeah,
sure.
no doubt.
Awesome. Well, that there is the Cannondale Jekyll. I think we should move on to the Fezzari LaSalle Peak. Another turnkey bike that is, I think, probably one of the top recommended picks of our crew. It is just a very versatile, adaptable, customizable bike that we had a lot of fun on. I think we found the ceiling of that bike in terms of like where you start to kind of possibly override it or find that it's at its limit of like returning comfort and confidence to the rider. But
Yeah.
not that we're by any means the best or the fastest riders in the world, but I think the average Joe public rider, trying to evaluate how often they're going to be pinging off that rev limiter, so to speak, I think it's not going to be that high of a number. I think if we're talking about enduro racers, right, we're talking about those Cat 1 to Pro guys that are just absolute monsters. They might find the limit of that bike. Granted, they might have access to some little different shock tunes or other help or time to learn that bike more. But
that being said, this bike had like the most Gucci suspension.
It really did.
Anything on test.
It did,
so.
and still came in at less than other bikes, right? At just over. What was this here? Just over $8,000 with EXT suspension. It's pretty impressive. And again, Fezzari is a brand known for value. They have a very cool custom bike builder or customizable options on their website, so you can definitely get this bike down. Do you recall what the starting price on that was?
For the Pro
LaSalle
build, it starts at 64.
Okay.
But I mean, there's
Stuff way
5
below
other
it.
builds below that that start way lower.
Yeah.
So,
But
I mean, it's worth talking about like the bones of it first. Like the geometry of the bike is not the thing that was holding it back, I don't think. It's pretty middle of the road. So it's like 485 reach, 631 stack, 64 head angle, which is the one we're seeing on everything.
Yep.
The chain stays are a little on the shorter end at 437.
Not radically though.
No, not short. I
guess you like longer stays.
Yeah, I'm pushing that. I want to see that grow. But yeah, overall, like pretty middle of the road geo-wise. I don't think anything stood out in that way. Like it didn't feel like it needed change. Sure, I'd like to see a longer stay, but that's just me. The stack was a little lower than other bikes, and it felt
it's not
smaller.
Not enough. Not enough to where we couldn't just put a little bit higher rise bar on there.
Right.
And I think we would get where we wanted.
True, but I feel like you and I both remarked on the fact that even compared to bikes that are smaller, like geometry-wise, it felt
a little more cramped, which was an
cramped.
Interesting feel because it was 10 mil longer than some of the 475 bikes that somehow felt a little longer.
Like comparing it to the Cannondale, which is 10 mil shorter, I felt like the Cannondale had more room, but that's probably higher stack and longer stays.
It is a lot of fun and very fast on smoother bits of trail, more jumpy, flowy, pump type trails. We did experiment with some air suspension on this bike as well, so we took the XT off and put some pretty budget-minded Marzocchi Z1 fork and the Bomber Air rear shock, and almost in some scenarios, like you and I both liked that bike more in certain instances. I think the pedaling was probably a little better. It was also a little faster and offered a little more platform for like pushing out of berms and on like mellower jump trails.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool to know, right? Like, because there are some bikes where we would absolutely say you should run a coil on it, right? Like the Orbea. This bike, you could run air or coil, depending on what kind of feel you want, and still have a really good time, and maybe even have a better ride depending on your terrain. But, all right, so moving on from the everyman's bike to the burly man's bike, we will get into the Norco Range. So if you've been around for a while, you'll probably remember the Norco Range has been on our site and channel quite a bit. Back from, I guess, earlier this year, we've been putting a lot of miles. We've had some highs and some lows with this bike. We had some shock issues. We had a seized linkage extension bolt that was causing some problems, but once we kind of got everything solved, we finally came into realizing like, all right, this bike is pretty badass. We see what the hype is about. That being said, that hype isn't for everyone, ourselves included. So let's first, okay, all right, you're one of these Bellingham guys, all right. So we'll get into a real brief overview of the Geo, and then we'll get into the climbing, which is gonna be obviously something that's important for enduro guys. So size large had a 480 reach with a 641 stack, which is on the higher end, which we are fans of. 63.25 degree head tube angle, 77 seat tube, 20 mil bottom bracket drop, and 442.5 chain stays, which grow quite a bit. 170 mil. This particular bike weighs in at almost 38 pounds and retails for $96.99 currently. So Sean, you love climbing more than anybody.
Oh, totally. Love it.
Talk about your time climbing up Dead Cow.
Climbed fairly well. I mean, once we got to this super tech bit though, towards the top, it definitely got a little bit harder with pedal bob and strikes and things like that. But I mean, once I was able to get past a couple of those harder pushes, like, I mean, it climbed decent. But I mean, there's definitely better climbers in our group.
Sure.
The
This
Orbea.
bike's not biased for climbing though.
No, it's like a
90% downhill, 10% climbing bike.
Okay.
Which is pretty sick.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's a place for everything, right? Because there's people who are lucky enough that only, 10% of their riding is climbing. So
This is true.
Moving into what this bike is kind of geared and designed for, which is going downhill fast. Where do you think it sits, Dario?
It's fast. So I guess like a lot of our take on this bike was it just feels very pointed. Like it's a really purpose-driven bike. Feels maybe even like its purpose is beyond that of enduro racing. It definitely feels like a downhill bike. It's just big, planted, has like almost infinite feeling grip, which is really nice in the right circumstance. It doesn't like to get off the ground unless you're hitting a jump. You can hop it over stuff just the same, but it feels like it takes a lot more English to do that.
Yeah, like you have to lift up that extra bit more to un-Velcro it from the ground.
Yeah, it wants to
feet.
It stays stuck. But that means that when you're motoring through like choppy stuff, going down steep bits, any wide open section, this is the fastest bike for me.
I think it's pretty, I guess, undeniable, right? That the benefits of the high pivot in the places that they excel, this bike really does well.
Yeah.
The one thing that we kind of talked about is, the reduction in, I don't want to say rider fatigue, but this bike allows you to regain some composure, catch your breath, get a little bit of energy back after those very challenging, physically demanding moments, where normally you come out of those and you're pretty gassed, and then you're cutting across a slope, or you've got a high speed section to get your breath. And some bikes, you don't get a break because it's just jarring the crap out of you. Your fingers are aching even more. and it's just like a white knuckle experience over all those braking bumps, right?
This one's a bit of a couch. It's
This
like
thing,
comfortable.
it just eats that stuff up. So you actually can kind of like relax your fingers. You can kind of like even sit down or like just get those couple of deep breaths before you get back into the next technical section. And I think that's really cool. And for like a racer who's doing those big long runs, worth noting.
The back end grows a ton on this bike. Compared to the Jekyll, which is also like a mid-high pivot, you know, that has a growing rear end, but it also like hooks back at a certain point. It just makes for a more predictable feeling bike. The range, however, through tight corners, trying to like unweight over awkward stuff, I think we all felt the sensation of it. Like, it almost feels like you have like a bungee cord behind you, where like the back of the bike is still back there, but you're trying to hop over this thing, and then it like snaps back to you. That's okay once you're used to it, but it's still a little awkward.
Yeah.
I found that like if you're like pre-hopping into anything steep or trying to like pump out of a corner and then get over like to the other side of the trail, it just feels like you're leaving the bike behind in some spots. It's just not for like the tightest stuff, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, or like you said too, it is the slower speed, the tighter, the more awkward stuff, right? Which I think is worth noting, because there are people who live and ride in areas that have a lot of that type of terrain.
Yeah, like I would fit that bill. Like
yeah.
Bellingham is like
well,
steep,
depending on where you ride, right?
True.
It can get you into trouble
Yeah.
just as easily as it can get
Like,
you out of trouble.
I want to ride this bike more, but I also don't, because I feel like as soon as I start finding the like limit of it, I'm gonna like, I don't have the skills to match that. So
yeah,
it's cool. Like it really, really, really handles well in some of those scenarios.
It is a beast of a bike. And
Yeah.
like it will eat. So we'll move on to another pretty purpose-built machine, the Orbea Rayon. Orbea is no stranger to the podium in enduro racing. I mean, this bike is built to race.
Yeah, Martin just got a second place, I think.
Again, yeah. I mean, this is a ripper, and it's fast, and it is fun, and it is capable. Also, not for everybody.
No.
So, geo numbers are very in line with kind of the general populace, I think, and what people want.
Part,
485 reach, 637 stack, 64 head angle, 77 seat tube, 35 bottom bracket drop, depending on, again, on if you're running it mullet or 29 and what setting you've got everything in.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, too low for me personally, because again, I like techie, rocky terrain. 440 chainstays and a 1260 wheelbase.
Yeah.
Orbea has a My O program, so you can customize paint. You can pick color. You've got some selections that you can make regarding spec and suspension. So this bike weighs 32.5 pounds as we have it, the MT model, which makes it the lightest bike. And it retails for $79.99 right now. Sean, I know you spent quite a bit of time on this bike.
Yep.
It's also worth noting, we did ride this bike a lot with the air and coil shock. We try to do that on as many as we can, and we definitely have a suggestion for those of you interested in the bike. So,
I mean, it's worth noting that before this bike, I also bought the previous generation, and very different feel as far as frame goes. Like this new frame, way stiffer.
Really?
Like this feels more like a Formula One car. It's just very solid, stiff.
It's the race bike.
It's the race bike.
Yeah.
Like for a lot of the lower mountain stuff that we were on, the air suspension was really good. I mean, it's a lot more flowy trails, less tech.
pedaling is great.
Yeah.
Although it pedals good with the coil too. It's just, it's the best pedaling bike in the shit.
It's got a solid platform. Like once we got the coil shock, after we had to order a new air shock because we blew that one, the coil was noticeably different, I think. A lot more compliant, softer, but still super fast.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, we all kind of remarked on, especially with the air shock, that like breakthrough on the travel is a little harsh.
Yeah, you gotta push it.
When you're pushing it, it feels comfortable. I mean, it's kind of like that Cannondale where like, if you're riding it lazy, it doesn't feel that comfortable with the air shock. When you're riding it hard, it feels great. You have to be on point for it to feel like safe and comfortable in some of those scenarios. But I really like that feeling on the bike. It's fun. It just like forces you to push.
Yeah, it's without a doubt, right? Like how we were just talking about the Norco range. This is a bike where I think, you know, you as the consumer need to evaluate and honestly ask yourself what terrain you have, how hard you want to push, and what your goals are with your next bike purchase. You know, if your goal is to take seconds off your race time, to have a very fast, efficient pedaling bike that will feel good when you are attacking the trail.
Yep.
This bike is probably, I would say, we're a little bit of a spoiler alert here. This is the racer's pick.
Yeah.
Right.
But I do think it's worth like comparing this to the Fezzari. I think they're both pretty well rounded. Like,
yeah.
Sure, the Orbea is like whatever, a firmer feeling bike, let's say, but they both pedal really well. Mm-hmm. They both ride tamer terrain comfortably.
Yeah.
I don't mind the lower bottom bracket on the Orbea in like technical climbing or rocky sections. Like for a while I've been riding a bike that has like a 40 mil bottom bracket drop, so like even lower than that. And once you get used to it, it's fine. It just takes like adapting to a new bike.
And I think we all agree we would go coil on the Orbea if we were building on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah, coil, and then if you're racing it, go 29er front and rear.
Yeah.
The mullet is cool, it's fun.
Like when you get in the zone and when your body is feeling it, I don't know if there's much else that corners the way that Orbea does.
No, it's killer.
Like
Yeah.
there's a couple of corners, like some of those slappers in on Rockfall.
Yeah.
You know, like where you're like just in that pocket of eroded just dirt, and there's like that lip, like that wall of dirt. That bike just, dude, you feel like a hero.
For sure.
But for me, right, and my fitness and mindset, and with, you know, a lot of stops for filming, those sections are few and far between. And a lot of the other sections are like, oh, my fingers are hurting. Which reminds me that probably the second worst grips of any bike in the roundup.
Those race face ones were bad.
Behind the canyon. But minor complaint, but still.
Small thing. Yeah, I think.
Sick bike though.
Yeah.
I loved how light it was. It pedals great. It is fast.
Yeah.
And it wants you to ride it fast. All right. There it is. We'll move right on down the line to the Specialized Enduro. Worth noting that the Enduro we have was a frame set that was a kind of a fun project. I built it up as like a personal bike. So it's not as you will find it on Specialized website. However, there isn't really anything totally custom or unique or different other than maybe my rear shock selection, which surprised you, but I think also surprised you.
Yeah.
And the TRP drivetrain.
Correct.
Which you can miss it.
Yeah. So let's get into the Enduro.
Yeah, the Enduro. So it's not a new Enduro. It's the one that's 3 years old, and it's still really good. The bike holds up. I don't know. I was impressed again and again by how well this bike rides, especially compared to all these like brand new wonder bikes. To me, it felt immediately the fastest. Like I was able to go faster on some of the other bikes once I figured them out. But the Enduro just like puts you in a racing position quickly.
Yeah.
The Enduro, it's a 3-year-old bike, but the geometry holds up, I think. Head angle's around 64 degrees, depending on some frame options. The stack is a little lower than some of the other bikes at 629, and similarly, the bottom bracket drop is a little less than others at 21 mil. It's a slightly more cramped cockpit, but you're in this like speedy position the whole time.
It was easier to jump on that bike and be comfortable than a lot of the other ones. Like it was instantaneous. Whereas the other ones, you kind of hopped on and you're like, oh, this kind of feels weird after being on other bikes. It's like, you get on that one, you're like, oh.
It feels really balanced.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. It's like, even before I had the suspension dialed for me, I like my first ride on the bike was like the gnarliest trail on the mountain, and it was just like instantly good. Like I felt like I was pushing hard on it, feeling comfortable. It's worth talking about the fact that the shock that you've got in there is, in theory, even less capable than some of the like burlier coil or air shocks on the market. It's a Float X, tuned for that frame, but it feels like super active. It's like similar to that Canfield where it's like fluttering through the travel. But the nice thing about the Enduro is it has pretty good progression, so you're like pushing into that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you guys both enjoyed the bike. I don't really want to take too much pride in that, but I mean, the Enduro is a very cool bike. I mean, it's actually the first Enduro I've ever ridden. I have not ridden a Specialized Enduro, at least one in this, like, I mean, 10 years ago maybe I rode one, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'd ridden that like the prior gen, like X-Brace one quite a bit.
Yeah.
This is a way better
The last
bike.
Enduro I rode was 26-inch wheels, we'll say that.
Yeah,
okay. So I was very stoked, man. Like, I hopped on that thing and just instantly, like you guys all said, I felt comfortable, I felt fast.
Yeah.
I loved, similar to the Canfield, I loved how like just fluttery and smooth and active that shock felt, just like going over the top of the lava rock or hitting roots. It pedaled well. It's not the best pedaler, but it's
bad, though.
pretty dang good.
Yeah.
It did well on big successive hits. It did pretty well under braking. Like, I think it, you know, maybe didn't shine as like the best in, you know, a spot. I mean, I don't know. It was very, very high, but there was like not really any downsides.
No, and I think when it comes to like racing, especially racing blind, like that's kind of what you want.
Yeah.
You don't want something that has like highs and lows. You want like a bike that just works well across the board.
Yeah, because wherever you go, it's going to look pretty dang.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Fuji Auric LT, and that's a bit of an interesting bike. We've got some things.
Interesting is an interesting word.
Yeah, it is the most affordable bike currently at $34.99. It weighs in at 37.6 pounds, and it does feel heavier than others. It is a 160 bike. It is the only 27.5-inch front and rear wheeled bike we had. 490 reach. 63.5 degree head tube angle, 75 degree seat tube angle, 15 mil bottom bracket drop, 425 chainstays, which were extremely short, and the big number, 603.5 for the stack height.
Yeah.
Dario, do you want to lead this one off?
Yeah. So I've mentioned it with some of the other bikes. Like, I'm on the taller end for a lot of size larges. I think for 7 out of 8 bikes in the lineup, they felt good. Like, I prefer to ride a slightly smaller bike. The fit was great. I hopped on the Fuji. Fit was not great. Super low stack just makes you feel hunched even when you're going downhill. Like, at no point do you feel like you're like secure. The geo of the bike is just kind of funny to me. Like, they've got a really slack head tube angle, like almost tied with slackest on the test.
Yep.
The reach is quite long for a large.
Yep.
But then you've got a really short rear end, a really high bottom bracket, and a really low stack, which makes for like a kind of cramped cockpit. And just the like combination of all those made for something that didn't seem to shine anywhere, which is too bad, because I think like the suspension, the rear end suspension felt quite good.
Yeah, the M-Link platform has some good characteristics.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a good horse link bike. Like, it works in a variety of situations. The coil shock felt nice on it. I thought it pedaled quite well, especially for having a coil and being pretty heavy. Like, I don't mind a heavy bike. I think it pedals lighter than that.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the bike from the side, like the top of the seat tube and the top of the head tube are pretty
About
much
the
in
same.
line with each other,
Yeah.
which is not something you see anymore.
No.
So it's, and you know, you could argue that, okay, you could put a longer travel, you know, 29er fork on there, or just a 170 29er fork. You could get a high-rise handlebar. You could do
but
these
then you're like
things to
choppered
combat
out.
that low stack. But, you know, ultimately, you know, at that point, you just start spending a couple bucks more and you get into a Canyon that already has modern day geo and a bike that is gonna ride good out of the box. You know?
Yeah, I think it just runs into some like hard point geo things that you can't really fix.
Fuji
like,
could fix them, but yeah.
yeah, I can't fix them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
Pretty
want to.
easily, I think, too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, you know.
Yeah, like an
evolve.
update will be better.
Ultimately, there are some good things in the bike.
Yeah.
And I think a relatively easy frame update will take this bike into another level, right? I mean,
so.
I think if that stack height was, you know,
40 mil.
25, 30, 40 mil higher, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you know, we're talking, that thing was 603 and everything else was in that 630 to 640 plus range, like that's a big difference. So.
Yeah.
We had to take a minute for ourselves here. It's a tight race. It's a tight race. So
It's tough.
I think we'll save our personal picks for the end.
That's the harder choice.
I still
anyways.
don't know where
Yeah.
I'm going, but all right.
mine.
So we're gonna pick the I guess the everyman's pick, the bike that we would maybe recommend to the general public who is asking us for, hey, what bike do you think I should buy?
Yeah.
Fezzari, I think so.
Yeah.
You feeling good about Fezzari, Dario?
For me, it's a toss-up between the LaSalle Peak, Fezzari, or the Canfield. I think for most people, most people aren't racing, most people aren't riding the gnarliest terrain. I think those two bikes fit that bill really well.
Okay.
The Canfield is super unique, offers quite good value, especially from a small brand. It's fun, it's nimble. I think it's gonna like keep a lot of trails exciting. The Fezzari pedals well, feels comfortable in a lot of terrain, and you got a bunch of different build kit options as well.
Yeah.
So
Great point for the Canfield. I would probably put that one high on my list. This Specialized Enduro is also high on my list because of just versatility, but I do think, Fezzari is also the bike on my list. I think because it's
Yeah.
on all three of our lists, that's probably gonna be the one we would say.
yeah,
Their customization options, the budget-friendly options, it's generally very fun to ride. It pedals very well. So
Yeah.
I think that Fezzari,
and it doesn't feel like a big bike. You know?
No,
I think we
no.
keep going back to that, but it's like, even especially compared to the other ones on test, it's like, it feels the trail bikeiest in many ways.
Okay. So Canfield Lithium, Specialized Enduro, and Fezzari LaSalle Peak, all extremely versatile, capable, and awesome bikes that we would recommend
Yeah.
to a lot of riders. Okay, the racer's pick. If you were gonna talk to a guy who's like, I'm racing Enduro next year, I wanna go as fast as I can, maybe that's you, right? It's not me anymore. But
Probably not, but
what
They're
bike
fun.
are you saying this will be the bike that's gonna help you race the fastest?
I mean, I'm leaning mostly towards the Orbea. It just has that racy feel to it.
Okay.
I think like if we're coming to enduro racing, like I'm gonna go with the namesake. I'm gonna go with the Enduro.
Yeah.
That Specialized, just like we've said it over and over again, like you get on it and it feels like you're in a fast position. There are little frame details that make it great for doing an enduro race. It's got frame storage that's quite big.
Yeah.
So does the Orbea, but the one on the Specialized is a bit bigger of an opening. You can fit more in there. A small detail, but like makes a difference when you're doing a long day out. And it's pretty adaptable. I think you could build it to be like, if you're someone who likes a softer suspension feel, you can get that out of that bike, where the Cannondale and the Orbea both have like a firmer top end that wants to like get pushed hard.
Yeah. My two race picks would be probably Orbea at the tip top for the racing and the courses, on the West Coast that I've seen and experienced.
Sure.
Maybe more pedal friendly, maybe fast, speed is a thing, you're pumping. I think the Specialized Enduro is also very high on the list because of the versatility, right? Like, it's not as good of a pedaler, it's not as light, so the Orbea is gonna save some energy, it's gonna ride a little higher, be faster, but
Yeah.
there you go. Orbea is probably the pick for speed.
I think so.
Enduro and Jekyll, very close.
Yep.
Now, Sean, you get to keep one of these bikes. Which one are you keeping?
They're all so good. For a moment, there's a time where I was just back and forth between the Fezzari and the Canyon. Like, those were the only two bikes I wanted to ride. I'll probably go Fezzari as it's set up now.
Okay.
If I'm paying for one, I'm going with the Canyon.
Okay.
Sweet.
So, Dario, what about you?
Go Cannondale. I like it. It's different. Built different. It's cool. It's I think for me the toss-up is between the Enduro and the Cannondale. Enduro, again and again, I'm impressed. It just holds up really well, and it feels like a bike that I would want to ride most days. Though similarly, like for where I live at least, that Cannondale it fits the bill.
I feel two very strong pulls right now. I like the uniqueness. I like the difference. I love the looks. I love the performance of the Canfield Lithium very much. Very, very much. High on my list.
Yeah.
And I hate the fact that what's going in my head right now is there's no water bottle mount.
There's no water bottle.
I feel like a pink bike commenter right now.
Yeah, sure.
But
there is, but
crap,
it's on the underside of the down tube,
Okay.
so it's gonna get covered in cow
That's
shit.
not happening. That's not happening.
No.
I'm sorry. I can't do it.
It's a bummer.
I rode in the 90s once. It's not happening again. So, I gotta say, dude, the Specialized Enduro, the two bikes ride very similar from a suspension feel.
Yeah.
I like lively, fluttery, smooth, plush off the top. I love just like kind of like that floaty feeling. Both bikes offer it well. If I closed my eyes and was kind of going over some of those rock sections, like I'd be hard pressed to really tell a big difference between the two.
Yeah,
like
sure.
I think they have a very similar feel that for me I like. I love the short rear end of the Canfield and the value proposition of getting into an Öhlins equipped bike and supporting a small brand that looks rad. I love that color.
Yeah, it's cool.
I love alloy frames. Man, but I'm just thinking about from a practicality standpoint, from a, you know, parts and dealer support standpoint, if I'm traveling, and honestly, dude, the frame storage and the water bottle,
Nice.
like, you know, I don't always want to carry a pack or have a bunch of stuff with me, and man, dude, the Enduro rides really dang good.
It does.
And it has those two extra little things that might be what it takes to push me over the top from like the little
Yeah, I mean, if you're
neatness
owning the
of
bike,
small
you
brand.
gotta have those things. I mean,
So there
I
it
will
is.
say, like, when we were doing laps, it's like you seemed most excited by the Canfield. And I think a lot of us were like the most surprised by that bike.
We were definitely the most surprised.
It was a lot of fun to ride.
And I would say, like, if you're a rider who doesn't have to have your water bottle and frame storage,
You're like a camel of some
check out
sort.
that. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you just need to drink one Rockstar in the morning and then you don't need anything else until your root beer for dinner, get the Canfield. You know, I mean, you could probably get a Velcro strap and put your Slim Jim and some Sour Sketties on there, and you'd be okay.
Yeah.
So
There we go.
All you need.
me, I can shove my Twinkies inside the down tube
Yeah.
and put my cream soda on the water bottle cage, so we're good to go. But we're a healthy bunch over here. So that is it, right? We're done.
I think so.
We're done. Hopefully that wasn't too long for you guys. Again, we would really like to thank you guys for watching and subscribing to the channels. If you didn't subscribe, please do it. Also, we would really like to thank Fox and Maxis for making this happen, helping us get the crew together for a few days out testing and making this awesome video series for you. So, thanks again, guys. We appreciate you very much, and we hope to see you out on the trails.